Hello, all NYP pet parents and those that are not pet parents as yet. This is a very, very important subject that we're going to approach because it relates to pets as well as I feel to humans. And I want to introduce you to this wonderful, wonderful, wise, with all her knowledge that she's imparted. And I wanted to share with you who this lovely person is who's giving us her time. Her name is Dr. Sarah Kerr. Hi, Dr. Sarah.
Hello, nice to
How
be here.
how are you? Well, first of all, let me introduce her. Dr. Sarah Kerr is a death doula. Now, we're going to talk about what a death doula is because that was something very new to me. I've heard of other doulas, but never of a death doula. Dr. Sarah is a death doula, sacred death care educator, and systematic constellation facilitator. With a PhD in transformative learning and a focus on ritual and rites of passage, Sarah's approach blends the spiritual with the pragmatic. Sarah has almost 3 decades of hands on experience and training in spiritual and shamanic healing practices. She offers a clear roadmap for students and clients who are called to meet death and loss in a soul based way. Very, very important. As an experienced teacher and trainer, Sarah has helped thousands of students validate their intuitive knowing that death is a soul journey, not just a physical experience. Sarah's courses give students the understanding, tools, and confidence they need to support dying people and their families and pets. In addition to creating the Center for Sacred Death Care library of courses and programs, Sarah lectures and teaches internationally, which is wonderful, wonderful, Dr. Sarah Kerr, because I am right now situated in Hong Kong. I'm based in Hong Kong. So, what we're going to discuss and have a nice chat with my cup of tea are, people all over Asia, Hong Kong, China, Malaysia, Philippines, all over, India. The most important thing I want to let you know, why is this so important for us? Because, Sarah, up till 15 years ago, pets were not such a huge part of families here. And in the last 8 to 10 years, we see pets everywhere. We now have a lot of pet parents and we love them. We adore them. And when it comes time for them to leave us, we're at a loss. We're at a complete loss. And I have to say, I grew up with pets myself and I live with 6 amazing, beautiful, furry companions. 3 of them passed on. Well, those were my only 3 that passed on. When I was not in Hong Kong, I was taking care of my mom, who lives completely at the other side of this planet. Well, the world, I would say. She lives in a beautiful island called Curacao. So I was never there. And one of them, Gina, 2 of them passed away differently. Gina I had to make that call right there on video, whether to euthanize or not. And when I had to make that call on my own, I can't tell you how I felt after that. The guilt, the grief, and most importantly for me was she was this little Yorkshire Terrier, and Sarah, she was a spark of light and energy. And I could not, this happened in 2022, so not so long ago. I could not understand, where did she go? And I started, in order to understand a bit more about spirit, I started going back to reading books of my masters. And one of my masters is Paramahansa Yogananda, who went into his incredible book, The Autobiography of a Yogi, and he explained about souls and all that. I was dealing with that as well as the guilt of euthanizing, and I could not cope. And 4 months went by, and I was not in a good state. So what did I do? I found the most amazing pet loss grief counselor. So she helped me get over a big chunk of that grief. And we're still remained very, very good friends. She's written quite a few books on Amazon. Her name is Kate McGann. And quite recently in July, I dealt with the transition of my mother. And I was there with her. I had the honor and the privilege to spend months with her before she transitioned. And then I had, ashes, and I looked at it and I was traumatized. I was absolutely traumatized because I only dealt, from a distance with the grief, but now witnessing this. And then I came back to Hong Kong after she passed on in October, quite recently. We're right now in November. And Oliver, my golden retriever, is at end of life. And I said to myself, thank God I'm here with him now. And I'm going to make this a complete different process than what I was allowed before. Let me listen to some professionals, experts like you, and hear how I can do this where it's less painful, a little less painful for me, definitely a lot less painful for Oliver, my golden retriever. And that's where you came into the picture. I heard you speak and I was mesmerized. I heard you and I rewound that interview at least 3 times. And it has helped me in all these weeks on my journey. So I really thank you, Sarah. And I want to share, your wisdom, your knowledge and everything you can to alleviate what we're all going through in Asia. Every pet parent will go through this, if not with their pets, with their loved ones in one way or the other. And, we come from a different cultural background where grief has not been expressed the way it should be openly. We come from a culture where the passing on of pets has not yet taken emotionally seriously to its full extent. It's that stiff upper lip. So thank you. And I would love to start with the first question. You are a death doula. What is a death doula? That I've never heard of that before.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I have to name, while we're in the pet department, just have to include the rest. I have a cat who's sitting on my lap right as we speak. And I have my own old dog who's over there.
Oh my goodness, he looks like my Oliver. Oliver's exactly like him. Ollie is 16 years old.
She's 14.
Yeah, and Ollie's 16, and I have, okay, so since we're doing show and tell, I only have one right now, and he is Nicolino. He's my little Yorkie, and he's also 16. So I have 2 senior citizens. But he's doing okay. It's Ollie that can barely walk now, and Goldens. Yours is a golden.
He's a doodle. She's a golden doodle.
Sorry, I didn't see that correctly.
But she looks like a golden. She doesn't have curls. She has feathery fur.
Yes, and I put all the others are waiting outside the door because I said I didn't want too much noise because this is such a sensitive subject. And so thank you for introducing me to your wonderful family.
Yes.
Thank you. They're so special. And that's how we all feel here in Asia about all our pets. We feel that, but we don't have the tools how to cope when that time comes. And most of us will. It's inevitable.
So you asked what a death doula is.
Yes, let's start with what a death doula is.
So a death doula Well, if people know what a birth doula is, at birth, there's a midwife who's essentially a doctor for giving birth,
Yeah,
has all the medical skill, and a
right.
doula is more the emotional, social,
Yeah,
practical aspects of things. So at death is in a way much like birth,
yeah,
right? That we come in through one gate, we go out through another gate. So we
correct.
have midwives and doulas to tend the one birth, and we have them to tend the other. So a death doula is a non-medical practitioner who supports people through the dying journey, dying people and their families, from when we know death is coming, through death, through the time after death, to the funeral, and sometimes even beyond in grief counseling or grief support. We're not therapists or counselors. And my particular approach in death doula work is to be what I call a sacred death care guide.
Yes,
So I'm bringing a spiritual lens to it,
yes,
spiritual but not religious, a very expansive, inclusive kind of spiritual lens, really rooted in nature-based spirituality that
yes.
helps people understand the soul's journey before, during, and after the last breath.
Yes.
So there's a big field of death doulas, and we all do things a little bit differently. My particular pathway through that is about soul and spirit. And I work with humans and I work with animals. It
Correct.
helps both the family and the dying person or pet.
Yes, and that is huge. When you talk about the sacred death care that you do, how, you say we're not just our bodies and we have to look at it on a soul level. Um, what happens on a soul level, Sarah?
Well, I think there's the journey towards death and the journey after death. And the soul is really involved in both. One of the ways I think about it is that when we're alive, body and soul are together. And as we die, whether that's an expected death through illness or aging or a sudden death, an unexpected death, body and soul separate. And
Mm-hmm.
so the medical system understands and supports our body. The veterinary system supports the body, but the soul is a different aspect of us. And you can replace that word soul with essence or consciousness or spirit or really whatever word works for you. It's the non-physical part of us.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens after we die is, I think at one level, we shift frequencies, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain kind of frequency that we are as souls are energetic beings when we're in a body. Our frequency changes.
Mm-hmm.
And that frequency change, different cultures interpret in different ways. We all have different stories about what happens, but most people have some understanding that there's a metaphoric journey we go through.
Mm-hmm.
And the frame I use for that is that we're in the village of the living,
Mm-hmm.
and when we die, we cross a river, and it's the ritual support of our friends and family that
Mm-hmm.
help us cross the river. And then we land on the far side with our ancestors and we join the village of the ancestors. So
Mm-hmm.
that's really a metaphoric way of describing the journey of the soul, but it gives us something to engage with. And so we can think about what it is to be in the village of the living, what it is to get the support and offer the support we need for someone to cross, and what it is to be on the far shore, and then what it is to be in relationship between this shore and the other.
Yes, and that I feel is really, really important because, I'm speaking for myself. I was, they always say, oh, he or she's gone over when it comes to pets, the Rainbow Bridge. And when it actually happened to me, so I would console other people, let's say 10 years ago, oh, your pet's gone over the Rainbow Bridge and waiting for you there when you arrive with open arms and jumping. And I loved it. That was always so beautiful to hear. But when it actually happened to me, I was like, no, you cannot be somewhere else waiting for me over a Rainbow Bridge. Are you somewhere around me? So, Sarah, are they sometimes around you? Can we communicate with them? Do they see us? Do they come back in another form, another way, or another pet?
Lots of questions in that. I will say that if we have this image of the village of the living and a river in the village of the ancestors, then the task at death is for the one who's died, the animal, the cat, the dog, the person, to leave the village of the living and go to the village of the ancestors because they're ancestors, they're dead, they don't live here anymore. They need to be in their right place.
Okay.
And when we do the rituals and the ceremonies, we send their canoe across, ritually speaking, and we really let them go in the way we knew them. There's a process where we have to really say goodbye to them being here with us. Because if we don't say goodbye, we can kind of keep them stuck here a little bit. We need to let them go, to even metaphorically put our hands on the stern of the canoe, push them across the river so that they land on the far shore. When we do that, there's something amazing that happens is when they are well and well landed on the far shore, then there's opportunity for communication in between.
I see.
So it's not that they're here. They they need to be there because that's where they belong. But once they're there, we can be in conversation. It doesn't serve us to keep them here. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. And but it's the human nature of grieving the most. The first 2 weeks you are sobbing and you're grieving and that, like you said, let them go, but that's the hardest time to let them go. And I know that you're going to, in our course of conversation, guide us through slowly what are the rituals, because I heard you, and the ceremonies. And you know what, Sarah? Thank you for that. Because of what you said, I have prepared myself, because I've never had the honor to be physically near my three pets. I was away, and they chose to, I use that word choose, they chose to transition during that time. And I was told there's a reason for that. But I think, Ollie, so far so good. We're having we're going through this together, and there's also a lot of communication, obviously non-verbal, with Ollie and myself. But like you said, I loved what you said. I've never heard that metaphor before. This is something new. In that canoe where you send them off, and how long after that can we sort of seek them out again?
It all depends. And a good animal communicator is really a great help in that because an animal communicator can tell what's happening for them. It's what's more important than the time is the energy of it. And we need to come to terms with the fact that they are not here.
Yeah.
And if you jump really quickly to being in conversation with them through a medium or an animal communicator, sometimes you can kind of skip the part where they're not here. But being in the part where they're not here, being in the grief, being in the acceptance and awareness that they aren't here is actually part of the healing.
Okay.
So, everyone has to make their own choice and follow their own lead in this, but I kind of encourage people to give them a little bit of time and to give yourself a little bit of time to actually register that they are gone. Because otherwise you can kind of skip that part and it's hard to really process your grief fully without actually being in it.
Hmm. Now, when you say give yourself that time, excuse me, it's one of the most difficult times of our life. Excuse me, because we see the leash, we see their water bowl.
Mhm.
What do we do during that time?
Well, what we do when our beloved people die. We have ceremonies and we
Yeah.
gather in community and we do ritual. So I really recommend a funeral, a pet funeral, just like you would have a human funeral,
Hmm.
because these creatures have meant a lot in our lives. They've been part of not only our family, but our community. They've had friends, they've had human friends, they've had animal friends. They're beings who have been here. And just like a good funeral for a human, a good funeral for a pet can help us make that shift
Mhm.
and sort of build up the grief and gather it into an energetic container so that we can send them off
Mhm.
and feel resolved and supported in it by our friends and family.
Right. Um, I've made a short list of the things that I'm going to do, but while he's still with us, I'm making that time very, very special for him. And even though he's not as mobile, but he's not in pain and he's eating very well. Um, so he's still enjoying things in his life. But I've made that little list. Now, when you say um, you talk about prepare our pets, not just ourselves, but our pets. Please, can you tell us how do we prepare them?
So, if I don't know how common euthanizing is in Asia,
Mm-hmm.
I know I was speaking to a Brazilian person the other day, and it was very unusual in their experience in Brazil to euthanize. In North America, it's very common.
Very
Many,
common.
yeah, many people will euthanize their pets. And I guess one of the things to say about that is it's sometimes surprising to people, but and I'm going to answer your question about preparing, but just to speak about euthanizing in general, just to leave open the possibility that euthanizing might not be necessary.
Yeah,
It's actually fine if the pet is not in pain
yeah,
to let them die on their own time.
yeah.
Sometimes people just assume that euthanizing is required. It's not. It's
No.
only really in cases of stress or distress or pain. But if you've decided, yes, this animal is in distress, this animal is in pain, the kindest thing to do is to euthanize them.
Correct.
Then yes, you're right. There's preparing yourself, but there's preparing them. And what I do in that situation is really encourage people to be in conversation with
Yeah,
their animal. The way, it sounds like you know how to be in nonverbal communication with your pet. Be in conversation, tell them what's happening, ask them for a sign,
yeah,
right? And I did this with a dog I had years ago, and I got a very clear sign from him that he was ready.
yeah,
Oh, okay. And then I'm very clear about the timing. I'll say, in 4 days, it's happening. And I
yeah,
tell them and I tell them and I let them know and I say, and if you'd like to go now, before that, this is your time. If you have control over that. I speak to them as if they're any other living being that is worthy of attention and engagement and prepare them. I put up pictures of previous pets I've had, pets they've known, who will be in the village of the ancestors to receive them. I treat them like I would treat a human.
that's wonderful. I have a magnificent veterinarian down the road, and she's always attended all my little buddies. And I had a talk with her because I feel clarity is really, really important now that I have, like I said, the luxury to be present with Oliver while he's going through this steady but fast decline. And this clarity with the vet, asking a lot of questions beforehand. What do you think? How bad is it? Um, will you will you please advise me what I should look out for, and and then make that call? When should that decision then be made accordingly? And so I feel that, like you said, the pet parents, euthanasia, it's not just bam. It's it's the natural way too. I'm not an animal communicator, but I think we can all intuitively feel from our animals and our pets. And I very often go up to Oliver and I'll say, Ollie, are you okay? And will you tell me when it is? And sometimes I must say that and it can happen to anyone. Initially, because you take over, you interpret it a little bit, uh, wrong, but then I give it 5 more minutes and then I see another version of him. So I realize it's my fear that is projecting. And I remember you said something in one of your interviews. If we don't know, it will cause a lot of fear in you. And you said that. You said, these, you're going to make a fear-based decision. And so I try and speak to my vet as much as I can. Now, when prepare for that, so are you called also at a just before euthanasia? Are you called
You
during that
know, it,
period?
I people call me in all sorts of different ways around this. Often it's people who are struggling with a decision.
Yeah,
The pet is aging or ill, and they're struggling with the emotional decision
yeah,
of it,
yeah.
and struggling with questions of guilt and sometimes I call myself a kind of clergy for the unchurched.
Love
I'm
it.
not a clergy person, but
Yeah,
it's a little bit. It's a kind of thing of what I do,
absolutely.
and it's a sounding board and someone who's had some experience in this to just help people talk through it. And very often, what I'm doing is validating and giving people permission.
That's the word. The validation is huge because we're at a loss.
Mhm.
When I had to make that decision sitting all those thousands of miles away, I need I had to make that decision right there and then. And the guilt
Mhm.
validation would have definitely helped me if I had someone like you, you know. Um, it wasn't my veterinarian who was on call at that time, it was the surgeon, and it was Gina's gallbladder. She tried to, perform surgery on it and it didn't go well. And so, after that, I was like, who do I get validation from? Did I do something wrong? And so, this is huge, the validation part that you can help people with. And then, do you help them afterwards with how?
Yeah, lots of people, you've mentioned it a few times, need support, need affirmation that they're
Yeah,
making the right decision, and need help just untangling the guilt. There's can be a lot of guilt. And the way I sort of hold or understand that guilt is that when a being we love dies, it feels terrible. It just feels terrible. And our system is kind of wired to find a reason, especially in Western culture. I don't know about in Hong Kong and your experience, but certainly in Western culture, we want a reason. We want to say this caused this. I feel bad because. And so it's it's sometimes our mind does a little funny switch where we say, oh, grief is really hard. I'm going to feel guilt instead. If I feel bad, it must be a reason. And maybe the reason is I did something wrong.
yeah.
So we create really where we likely did nothing wrong, but we create a story that we're guilty or we just feel guilt even without a story. Because there's something about guilt which is no fun, but sometimes it's easier than grief. Because grief is a kind of bottomless hole and it's hard to find meaning in grief. Like what they died because it's the mystery of living and dying. They died and we can't say why.
Mhm.
But the part of us that makes us want to make it our fault or makes it guilt softens that a little bit, but it doesn't really.
Mhm.
So I encourage people, sometimes you have regrets.
Mhm.
Regrets are very different than guilt.
Mhm.
Guilt is doing something that caused harm, that was intentional, and sometimes that happens. Sometimes people make the wrong decision. It's rarely intentional. But regrets are a little more they're a little lighter to carry. I'm sorry I didn't visit him more. I wish I had spent
Mhm.
more time. Those kind of regrets, can also be heavy to carry, but they're lighter than guilt. And I often encourage people to look at what they're calling guilt and say, is it really guilt or is it actually regret?
Right.
And if we can see it more as regret, I wish I had. I wish I had this, I wish I had that.
Yeah.
Regrets can be a lighter thing to carry.
Correct. Yes. You know, Sarah, I have a wonderful lady who's part of my company, and her cat passed away. Her cat was quite old, passed on a couple of months ago. And I don't live with little children. I live by myself with my six pets. My kids are adults and out of the house. But she has two little kids in her house. I think they're about 6 and 4. And not only was she grieving desperately for her beloved cat, but now she also was kind of confused. How do I explain this to the children? And she lives in Eastern Europe. I did not ask her what she did. Was there a cremation or anything? But I would love you to tell me your story of Ruby. And when you shared that, your story of Ruby, and especially when you talked about the ashes, I realized how important it is. So when I was telling this wonderful lady, I said to her, I'm interviewing Dr. Sarah Kerr, and she speaks about the kids. She goes, I cannot wait to hear what she has to say, because she did struggle, and the kids come home from school and they're asking, where's where's the cat, you know? So yes.
So, with kids, first of all, I trust the parents' intuition about what's the best way to proceed. And within that, what I found in my experience is that an age-appropriate version of the truth is probably the best thing.
Mm,
And so a cat is aging, you decide to have it euthanized. It's a hard conversation to have, but my recommendation is usually that people tell the kids before it's going to happen, so they're not surprised. So
mhm,
they know what's happening, they know what to expect, they can say goodbye.
mhm,
Even little kids have a relationship with an animal, of course, and they want to say goodbye.
mhm.
So that's, I don't know, it's not clear, is that what whether she did that or not, but in general, I try and encourage people to let kids know and let kids be part of it. And as young as they are, I mean, so I've been at euthanizing ceremonies with very little children who are there and they watch it happen. And if it's set up the right way, if they feel supported, if they have choice, if they have someone who at any moment they want to leave the room, someone can go with them. You don't want to force anybody to do anything. But if it's set up as something beautiful and safe and sacred and a part of life, then kids are often not in fear.
Mm,
They often can, they mirror from their parents. If the parents say, this is sad, but it's
mhm,
not dangerous.
mhm,
When we mix up sad and dangerous,
mhm.
that's where we kind of get a bit scrambled. When we say, oh, you shouldn't be here, or we won't talk about this around you, we're sort of implying that death can cause harm.
Correct.
That being at death can cause harm, talking about death, hearing about it. But it doesn't actually cause harm. If we say this is sad, it's really, really sad. And here are some tools for being with the grief. Here's how I, as an adult, grieve. Here are some tools for you as a child. This is how you can grieve. Then we give people life skills that they will carry with them by giving them a chance to actually be with the experience and navigate the grief. So, so supporting kids to go through it is often about, again, being age appropriate and explaining what's happening. Fluffy's body is breaking down. It's causing her pain. We've decided this is the most beautiful and peaceful and gentle and kind thing to do. And it's hard, but it's okay. That's really the most important message that parents can give to children. It's hard and it's sad, but it's okay. And and we can all get through this by coming together and supporting each other. It's
Correct.
not dangerous. It's not something to make taboo. What's really important with kids is to talk about it in direct, plain, simple language. So, not to say we're having the dog put to sleep,
Hmm.
or not to say the vet will give him some medicine and he won't wake up. Because
Hmm.
children are very literal thinkers. And if we say, Fido has gone to sleep and Fido never wakes up again, a child could reinterpret that in their head and say, well, I'm not going to go to sleep
Absolutely.
because I might not wake up. Or if that's what happens when you take medicine, I don't want to take any medicine.
Yeah.
So the approach with children is really to be age appropriate, but
Mm.
as direct and simple as possible. And without a whole lot of over explaining.
Hmm.
The vet is going to inject him with a chemical. It's going to cause his heart to stop, or it'll slow down his breathing. He'll fall what looks like sleep, but it's not sleep. And then his heart will stop, and then he will be dead. And to really use those words, he will die, he will be dead. He's not alive anymore.
Hmm. So when a child says, but mommy or daddy, okay, I can see that my cat, my dog, the body's here, and you're saying he or she's dead, but the body's here. So where have they gone? Now, do we then talk about the Rainbow Bridge and the soul level? How do we explain that to a
Yeah, I
child?
mean, the rainbow bridge is such a beautiful image,
Yeah,
right? That
I like
that
that. Yes,
their body's not here, body and soul have separated.
correct.
And we love their body, we'll care for their body, we'll build them a coffin, we'll bury them, we'll cremate them. Help kids be involved in those rituals.
Yes,
And then also let them know, yeah, our sweet pet has gone across the Rainbow Bridge and they're somewhere else, right? The Rainbow Bridge, they've gone to the other side of the river. And occasionally you might feel them come back, and we might have an altar for all our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents, anyone who's died. And we might put a picture of our pets in there too to say, yes, they're on the other side.
yeah.
And kids can understand that.
Your story of Ruby was so heartwarming. Would you like to share it with us?
Ruby was a beautiful cat, kind of gray and white with a little brownie in there, one of those tricolor cats, and lived with me for many years. And I lived on a beautiful little quiet city street. And she'd be in and out and in and out and in and out and out. She was fine. There were lots of cats in the neighborhood. And one day, a neighbor rang the doorbell. Rang the doorbell. I opened the door and I looked out past this neighbor and I saw that Ruby was lying in the road and Ruby had been
Oh,
killed. And a shriek came out of me. And I'd never had that happen. I'd never seen that before. And so I had a friend who was over who was also very close to Rudy. So we ran out into it was a very quiet road. She was just there. And we picked her up. We had brought a towel and we bundled her up in a towel and I brought her in and I sunk down in the front hallway. Like I barely even got in the house. I just dropped to the ground with her in my lap. I cried and cried and cried and cried. And my friend was kind of looking after us and looking after me. And after a while, I started to kind of come down a little bit. And I started to really pay attention to what was happening. And what I realized was that, so I had my other cat, a different cat, another cat named Milo, um, that Milo was gathered around her. Milo was licking her body and looking after her. And I could feel Ruby's spirit kind of recoalescing. It was like it had been shattered by the impact of the accident, by being hit by the car. And like her spirit had been shattered. And as I held her body, it was like her spirit kind of came back together and it reassembled itself in the house. And we sat there, I mean, we probably sat there for 4 or 5 hours over the course of the rest of the afternoon. And it took a long time, and her spirit kind of reassembled itself. And then it kind of went around and said goodbye. I could see her spirit walking around the house and checking, and then it settled, and I couldn't feel it anymore. It was like, okay, it needed to re-find itself. And if that had been a human who'd been hit by a car, of course, all sorts of things would have kicked into gear as they should, and we wouldn't have had that time. But I think I really learned something about sudden death
Mm.
and and the space the spirit needs after a death.
Mm.
So we sat with her body for a long time, and then my friend left, and actually she used to sleep on my chest. I would nap on the couch, and she would sleep on my chest. So I actually laid on the couch, and I had a nap, and with her body on top of me,
Yeah.
just the way we always used to do it. And I kept her body. So there you go. More cats coming to visit. I kept her body for that night and the next day. And then at some point, I had her, beautifully on the chair. And then at one point, I thought, okay, I don't need to be with her visibly anymore. I'm ready for the next stage of letting go. So I bundled her up in it was a beautiful royal blue towel, and I tied it with a red ribbon, and I made a little funeral bundle of
Yeah.
her. And then I just sat with that for a while. So it's moving it through these processes gradually.
Yeah.
And then the next day, Janine and I this is my friend, drove and we took her to the crematorium.
Mm.
And it felt really important to do it myself and to carry her there and to bring her in. It was a beautiful little pet crematorium that was very friendly and very supportive. And I had said to her, when you put her in, please do so with a lot of care. It was a funny question to ask, but I really wanted this. I said, can you send me a picture
Mm.
after she's cremated? Because
Mm.
there's something about being with the body and being with what's true. So the next day they did the cremation. It was really beautiful. They sent us a picture, and we went and picked up her ashes, brought the ashes home. And then, people have probably seen them, the cat's ashes, they were in a little bundle this big, not very much. There's not very much when it just comes down to the bones. And I put the ashes on the table, and my other cat was so interested. Like, he was not really very interested in things, but oh my goodness, was very interested in these ashes. And so it felt like a real closure. The other cat came and crawled around the ashes. Someone had sent me flowers. It was just this long, slow process
Mm.
of giving time to
Mm.
this really traumatic experience.
Mhm.
I think so often when people experience trauma like this, they're overwhelmed and they're so shocked
Mhm.
that it happens so fast. So
Yeah.
when something like that happens fast, bringing it down and making it slow. I sat with her body for a long time. I kept her body for a long time. We took it to the crematorium. I sat with her ashes for a long time. And in the end, what I did was take her ashes to the cemetery where many of my family are buried. It's a little teeny cemetery out in the forest. It's been there for 100 years or more. And we just dig our own holes. So I just dug a little hole, just a little hole for Ruby's ashes, and I added her and made a little stone for her, the same as all the other pets in our family. There's quite a collection of pets there at the foot of our people. So yeah, it was a beautiful story. Thank you for asking.
That was, well, thank you for sharing because, a lot of people have difficulty sometimes going back to that memory. I was yesterday in the gym and one lady was telling me how her pet passed away two years ago and her eyes just welled with tears, so it's very difficult for people no matter how much time goes by that the grief is there. And I remember in one of your talks, you said you have to give yourself that permission because I know she was holding back. She was holding. Give yourself permission to grieve because that is a huge deal. And thank you for saying that. When you say give yourself the permission to grieve, it's not just a dog or a
No,
pet
no.
or
For many people, it's their primary relationship. And even though the culture doesn't give us permission, we need to give ourselves permission because that's where the healing happens.
correct.
It
And I
needs
want
to
to
flow.
correct. And Sarah, before you go, I do want everyone to know, and I'm going to put this on the website, your website,
Thank you.
and during the interview, how they can get in touch with you, sign up for your workshops, your work, and your assistance. But this is mind blowing. You do sacred death care guide training. You do the archetype of the death walker. Wow. Navigating pet death. These are all separate things that you do. The soul's journey when death is coming, holding space at a deathbed, after the last breath, which is also huge, designing a healing funeral, ritual healing for grief and loss. Wow. All this is on your website. Yeah?
Yep, some of those are downloadable courses, and particularly the pet death course. I think your listeners would have find lots of interesting and helpful resources in there. And some of them are in person or online teachings.
I wish I had that in 2022, but you know what? It's okay. I'm learning how to live in the present moment, and what's meant to be is meant to be. And I have it right now with Oliver. And thank you so much for your time and sharing your family with us. And enjoy, by the way, everyone. Dr. Sarah Kerr is living somewhere where we all in Hong Kong wish we could be right now, which is a beautiful island off British Columbia. It's part of British Columbia, but it's off Vancouver. And enjoy. It must be lovely and cold now, and it's cooling down here too. But enjoy the holidays with your lovely family, and thank you for telling us all these things that we need to hear. We need to.
Beautiful. You're so welcome. Thank you for the invitation, Nita.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.